Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 6andOut podcast. It's your host, Craig here. We are on episode number 4. We've hit our first boundary in cricket, so that's very exciting. And because we hit our first boundary, it's episode number 4. We have a little bit of a different introduction today. We are going to have our first ever guest on the 6andOut podcast. Hopefully the first of many, but we are starting out with our friend Cheese of the Beijing Ducks. So please do stick around and listen to it because it's a fascinating chat about how he's played cricket all around the world in places that you might not imagine actually play a lot of cricket and established clubs there. So we got a great insight into that. We talk a little about charity work, a little about what makes cricket special in the amateur world, because I know a lot of us that play cricket have a very special relationship there. So please stick around. Leave some comments down below. We would love to hear your comments about what Cheese had to say, what Arnie and I had to say, or questions for us about the Asia Cup, any other cricket that's going on. So please leave those down there. But without further ado, let's head on over and have a chat with our good friend Cheese. Well, folks, Arnie and I are privileged to bring you today our first ever guest on the 6andOut podcast. Hopefully the first of many, like I've said. And we are starting out with a fine friend of ours, a man that is known as Cheese of the Ducks to us. Cheese, welcome along. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And that was a very elaborate introduction, but I'm doing well. It's currently, I'm not sure what time we are in the morning here. Currently 5 to 4 in the morning. So yeah, I'm okay.
Giving a new meaning to the word night watchman. Definitely living that out in real life.
Yeah, well, I've never been one up until now, so there we go. It's a pleasure to be on, guys. I feel really sort of humbled and special to be invited on as your first guest. So,
well, there you are. On the honors board of 6andOut, whenever illustrious names start to go on there, they'll always be sitting underneath your name, Cheese. So you'll have that. That's right. You'll have that in your back pocket.
They'll never take that away from you.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll just maybe set a little bit of context because you're our first guest, but I'll just say a bit of context because cricket does, as we know, and particularly cricket, sports in general, but cricket does have the ability to put us in strange places, in strange situations. And I wanted to raise that because I feel like, Cheese, you probably have the majority of the world beaten in that department with a couple of your experiences in terms of your amateur cricket as we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of months. So it is pretty hard for us not to start with how you kind of get your name, or how we refer to you as Cheese of the Beijing Ducks. Beijing obviously being in China. So we just start out and you can tell us, how did you end up in China first of all, and how did you end up helping to form a cricket club in Beijing? Let's start there.
Okay, yeah, it is a question I get asked a lot when people find out what my nickname is. But basically, I ended up in China because my wife accepted a teaching job in Harrow International School, so a very illustrious posh school in the UK, and she went out to teach in Beijing as an art teacher over there, and I naturally followed. So she went out before me. I had to wait a little bit of time because we weren't married then. So it was a lot harder to get a visa and everything like that, really. But yeah, I went out with the sort of expectation that, I'll just get a job when I'm out there. I'll find something. And luckily I did. I ended up working for a company that led hikes on the Great Wall of China. So I did that. I did that for a year. And led multiple groups of people trekking up and down the Great Wall of China in various remote locations. But at the weekends, that was sort of was my time. And being a big cricketer sort of all my life, and having played the sport whenever I can, really, it was one thing I was sort of not looking forward to the sort of the lack of cricket. But I found out that there was a cricket club based in Beijing called the Beijing Cricket Club, and it had 4 teams playing sort of under its banner. So I got in touch with them, and they just said, right, you need to turn up at this ground at this time. I say this ground, there was only one ground in Beijing at the time, so still is, I think. But yeah, turn up there, and you can play. This is your team. You are now part of the Daredevils Cricket Club, and you're playing for them. So I did. I followed the instructions, got there nice and early for I think it was a 10 o'clock start. I think I was there about 9:30. The only person there. It got to 10 o'clock. I was still the only person there. It got to 10:30. I think I was still the only person there. And then slowly, dribs and drabs of people started appearing. Anyway, it was good. The standard of cricket was good. Played on an artificial strip at the middle of sort of Dulwich College sports ground, which was really nice. So a full-size cricket pitch. But yeah, it just wasn't. It was like, I don't know. It just didn't have that same feel to me about it as like as a team, as a social event, as the sort of place where you'd make sort of good friends that you'd stay in touch with. And apart from one other guy there that day, really no one else sort of hung around after the game. So I was chatting with this Kiwi lad that I met, and we got on really well. And we shared a taxi back from the ground all the way back to sort of central Beijing, because we lived actually not that far from each other. And we were chatting in the taxi. Oh yeah, this isn't how we play cricket back home. And he was like, yeah, it's the same. It's like, yeah, different parts of the world, but it was more focused on the social aspect of the game. So we just got chatting, and he was like, oh, well, I met this American guy as well. And we almost had the same conversation. So we should all get together, us 3, and see what we can do about it. So we did. So myself, a guy called Pete Baker from the US, and I say a Kiwi, a New Zealander, Tom Ashton. We got together in a pub, which was handy because it was Tom was the head brewer of a local brew pub in Beijing. So we met there, had several beers, and talked and dreamed up big ideas of starting our own cricket club and dominating the Beijing League and most of East Asia. And yeah, it started from there really in 2016. So yeah, still going.
Like anything, the best laid plans are always formed in a pub around a pint. In fact, the club that I played for in United States here in Hoboken was formed at the back of a bar. Our president always tells a story of, and I'll ask you this question in a second, actually, of how you came to the name of the Ducks for your team. But our team was Hoboken, and for a brief period of time between, I think, beer 6 or 7, somebody suggested calling the club Hobotham, which, having been president of the club as an Irish one, he quickly shot that one down for a number of reasons. But as I digress. How did you arrive at the name the Ducks then? Was it a
well, yeah, it was we were just spitting names out as you do. There was also, I can't even remember some of the like the suggestions, but the one that sort of seemed to stick was just round the corner from the bar. There's the classic, obviously everyone's heard of Peking duck. But Peking being the old colonial name for Beijing. A lot of the restaurants in Beijing that specialised in duck, you would see it everywhere, and it's just advertised like #1 Beijing duck restaurant, like #1 Beijing duck. Well, there was never a #2, so it was like, yeah. So it was like, oh, what about the Beijing Ducks? And I was like, we sort of were like, yeah, because there's the play on the duck, obviously for cricket, and it's also a play on the food. So we decided on that. We were like, yeah, that's really good. So we sort of got stuck on that, and then we found out that the basketball team in Beijing the official Beijing basketball team are called the Beijing Ducks, which was like, oh no. We were like, no, we're going to stick with our name. It's like we're an amateur sports club, and it's the Beijing Ducks Cricket Club. So there's no confusion there. But then incidentally, a rugby team formed a year or two after we'd formed, and they called themselves the Beijing Ducks Rugby Club. So, yeah, it was funny. And we were all sponsored, apart from the basketball team, which were the professionals. We were all, the rugby club and ourselves, we were sponsored by the same Irish bar.
Of course.
A good connection there, yeah.
Of course.
Paddy okay.
Irish bars support. Irish bars are the backbone of the amateur sporting community. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. You talked a little bit a second ago, Cheese, just about whenever you were talking about, you raised the point that you had played cricket in China. Was there only really one place to play? Because we all think about cricket and how it can be played really in any scenario. You can play it in a car park as long as you have a ball and a bat. But organised cricket is a little different. You do need a strip. Were you really limited in where you could play the sport, or?
We were, yeah. We all the official games that we played were played at a school ground. So it's a big sports complex. There was like an American football pitch there, full size Astro football, hockey, you name it, it was there. But they had, being a British international school, they had a concrete strip with matting on top in the middle of their field, which was handy for us. So we used to share that. There became 5 teams in Beijing with the formation of the Ducks, and we used to play on their ground there for our match games, and that was all organised through the Beijing Cricket Club umbrella. But otherwise, we used to play on 5-a-side Astro football pitches simply because it was the only place you could really play, and it was surrounded by loads of netting. Fencing, even cover the top sometimes. So, I mean, you could happily smash the ball around, and you weren't in danger of causing any damage to sort of cars and the local residents as well, so to speak.
Did you get a few strange looks when you were in those places for the local? Because I can't imagine, you guys can correct me wrong. I don't think cricket is big in China. I mean, I'd like to think I know my main hubs of cricket, but did you get strange looks from folks like, what is going on over there?
We did. We'd often get sort of groups of, so usually with sort of older men, and they come round with a sort of that puzzled, inquisitive look, and they'd sort of stand and they'd watch for 5-10 minutes, and then they'd come up and they'd converse with you about like, what are you doing? Is this baseball? And we're like, no, this is. And the only way you could really describe it was as English baseball, which is really bad because it's just not. Anyone who's played cricket knows it's not baseball. But it was great. I mean, and we had a few really strange occasions once where like we were playing an actual game at the school's ground on the proper pitch, and just a family turned up like on a little 3-wheel trike electric cart, drove across the middle of the pitch, pulled up, stopped, got their picnic out and sat down in the outfield, to which we had to go over and explain to them that like, you've got to go off the pitch. We're playing a game here. The ball's really hard. And then they were like, oh yeah, it's okay. And then as soon as someone hit the ball and it went flying past them, crashed into like the pavilion, which wasn't that far away, made an awful, and they sort of got the message then that it was like, oh, this is dangerous now. So, all the time the groundskeeper just turned up and turned all the sprinklers on in the middle of a game. So yeah, there's a few occasions.
Dedication to the role, I don't care who plays on here. I just want a really, really good ground.
Yeah, Yeah.
Did you
It's,
ever, Cheese, did you ever manage to convince the locals to actually get involved in the game and sign up for the club? Because it's one thing that we find tricky in the United States, at least, and obviously the United States, there's competing sports like baseball and all that kind of stuff. But did you ever have a true local or a native go, you know what, I'm gonna throw my my historical sports out the window. I'm gonna give this cricket a go.
Well, we did in the sense that we had a guy. He lived down in Hong Kong actually for a while, but he was up in Beijing studying, and he was part of the national cricket setup in China. He was part of their development program. So he played for a while, but obviously he'd already been introduced to cricket and he was aware of it. But we did get a few locals. One of the guys worked in one of the bars, and he came down and gave it a shot. And he'd turn up, and he wanted to play, and we'd let him play. But he was a bit like, "Oh, I'm not very good, so I'll just watch for a bit." And he sort of became a bit of a supporter. But then he did play. But so, interestingly enough, we got more Americans signing up, just because we had 5 or 6 regular Americans come down and play with us, and they just they'd bring like their friends down, the Marines who were like the security force at the embassy. Some of them would turn up and play, and yeah, I mean, really interesting. But yeah, we really struggled with the locals to sort of get them.
Which is maybe not that, maybe not that surprising, right, when you think about it. But so you had your 6 teams in Beijing, but I believe you did a bit of traveling around for different competitions, and there were different cities or regions that would have played against each other.
Yeah, we the first tournament that we played in, that we travelled to, we'd only got six or seven members signed up then. So we thought, well, what better to do than enter a 6-a-side tournament? So we'd, I don't know how, I honestly still can't remember how, but we found out about a 6-a-side tournament that was being played in Nanjing, which is a couple of hours south of Beijing. For those who don't know, Nanjing sort of means southern capital. Beijing, Bay is north. So Beijing is like the northern capital. So we ended up getting in touch with these guys. We travelled down on the train, the high-speed train, in all our cricket gear, because we had to. We'd had shirts made, so we're going to wear these shirts, and turned up. And we couldn't find any hats, though. So we ended up with, have you seen those kids' hats that are like little duck bills with like a duck's face on the top? So we bought a load of those. And
like the ones you get at like a theme park?
Disneyland?
Yeah, so it was like a duck's bill, like on the peak. I've got photos somewhere. I'll send them over one day. And yeah, we went down on the train, and we got the location. We were meeting in this bar. It's like as all cricket events seem to do, they originate from bars and alcohol. So the welcome party to the Nanjing Sixes was in a bar in central Nanjing somewhere. So we jumped in a taxi from the train station, or taxis, because there was 6 of us, and we got to this bar, which was absolutely heaving. There must have been like 60, 70 people there, all spilling out of the bar. There was a live band playing, and all the other teams were there already, like very well oiled, and they all seemed to know each other. So there's us, the newcomers to this tournament, walking into a bar full of people we've never met before, who are all quite drunk, and we're all wearing our Beijing Ducks shirts and stupid hats. And the band are actually playing "Creep" by Radiohead. And it got to the and if you're familiar with that song, it gets to a section where it was just like, and it's like, "And you don't belong here." The whole bar just turned around and were pointing at us. "You don't belong," like over and over again, and it was hilarious. But then, like, some guy just came over with a massive tray of beers and was just like, "Here you go, like beers," and we were like, "Oh, great! Like, what do we get? Oh, yeah." And they were like, "No, they're all free. It's my bar. You just drink them." So, and it started from there really. And we went on to win that tournament in Beijing. It was a very social tournament, I'll put it this way. So the cricket was good, bad, and interesting all at the same time. The ground was interesting. Playing conditions were interesting. It was very, very memorable. So it was the good times. But yeah, we went to Nanjing twice. Off the back of that, obviously winning the illustrious Sean Connery Shield of Dreams, which was the name of the trophy. We then obviously upped our resume, so we applied and got invited to the Philippines International Sixes.
Oh wow!
So we travelled over to Manila and played there, which was good. And I think we ended up in like the semi-finals, I think, and lost in the semi-finals. But it was a really good standard of cricket. Teams from all over Asia and even Australia were going over there to play, and the UAE as well. They were coming over to play in that. We ended up going back there again, so we went there twice, and then from that we upped again, and we ended up at the Chiang Mai in Thailand.
Oh wow!
International Sixes. So we've played there twice, and we're due to go back next year because it'll be the first year that they've opened up again after like COVID. So I don't think, unfortunately, I won't be able to go, but some of the guys will. But it's good. And other than that, we've done a UK tour as well. 2019, we did a UK tour to coincide with the Cricket World Cup, which England rightfully stole off New Zealand.
That must have caused some drama with the leadership committee within the Ducks with your Kiwi and yourself.
It did. We were actually playing a game that day. It was the last tour game. Was the day of the final, and we never expected like England to get to the final. So we'll just organise games whenever we can. And there's probably about 6 or 7 Kiwis in our touring party. So we stopped the game. We started the game, and then we stopped it to watch like the last few moments, and then the super over. And it was like, I've never felt so joyful, but at the same time so like apologetic, because the really good friends there that were like,
Yeah.
you're team against, but you feel bad that your team's won and theirs has lost, and they were like, oh no, your team like were much better, but then we were robbed because of the situation and how it all happened.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting day, but a great way to finish off a tournament that a tour, sorry, that we'd been playing for. We played 10 games in 14 days on tour, and well, I played 12 actually, because I was still playing league cricket as well on the Saturdays. So I played 12 games in 14 days, and I've never been as exhausted as that.
And you bowl as well. That's a big undertaking to be bowling all those overs, and you know, if you're a batsman, I can kind of get it. You could just have a couple of low scores and stand around the field, but bowling takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, there is that. But it was a big undertaking, and plus I organised it all as well. I did all the logistics. I sorted out all the games, the accommodation for everyone, and oh man, it was, I think I just needed time off after that, like to be away from cricket for as long as possible, because I was cricketed out, which I never thought could ever happen to me. But it was good anyway.
And so the Ducks have do they have like a sister club? I was trying to explain this to somebody today. They have a sister club or related kind of clubs, or?
Yeah, we do. We've got not an official sister club, but one of our founding members, he moved back to the States. He's living in Texas, in San Antonio, I think. No, he's living in Austin, sorry. And he formed a club there pretty much the same way that we did in Beijing. and they're called the Austin Ducks, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But we do have an official sister club, which are the Black Swans, which are based out of Australia.
Yeah.
And they,
Perth? Would it be
yeah,
Western Australia? There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
out of Perth, yeah. So we met them when we were in the Philippines, and we just sort of hit it off with them, and yeah, stayed in touch, and yeah, it's been it's just been one of those. I mean, no one's really seen each other for the last 3 years because you can't really travel internationally, or you couldn't, or you weren't going to, just for a weekend of cricket, really. But yeah, hopefully that'll all pick up again when everyone gets sort of used to traveling again.
Do you have any? Do you have any favorite? I guess so. You've got the Beijing Docks. I know you're wearing your Metronomes outfit at the moment, which, by the way, it's a quality outfit. I'm a big fan of the unconventional jersey and shirts and whatnot. It looks fantastic, almost like a tie dye kind of theme to it.
It is.
Yeah. How did the Metronomes name come around? By the way, I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Oh no! The Metronomes Cricket Club started as a group of people just through Twitter that somehow agreed to play a cricket match to raise money for the National Autistic Society. But the organisers and sort of the founders, really, of this club is a couple called Bex and Michael, and one of their oldest child, I believe it's their oldest, suffers with autism, and he has trouble sort of concentrating and focusing a lot of the time. And one of the things they found that would help him sleep at night was they bought him a metronome, and it just sits there and it ticks away.
Yeah.
And he could adjust the pace of which it ticked. So they got at him, and he sort of never looked back. It's like being in his bedroom and ticking away as he goes to sleep, and it sort of helps him really focus, calm down, and so it just came from that, really. So hence it's on the logo. You can see a metronome.
Yeah.
I'll take a chance to plug that. I mean, anybody who likes good sporting merchandise, the logo is fantastic. It's got the rainbow colors behind it. That's some quality merchandise there. I'm going to be asking you how I can get one. Cheese for sure.
Well, I got in touch today with the guys who have done our kit, and soon the caps will be available and the shirts. So I will sort you each out one of those, and also one for Brett as well. I know he's not here, but
yeah, fantastic. And all for a great cause as well. Like that's the end.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings me on to maybe one of the final questions I had. And we talked a little bit about this, but we talked about different locations for cricket, different reasons for getting it. I mean, to you, I mean, what you play cricket not just to get out of the house, not just to roll your arm over, but what does it really mean or to you to have a good cricket club together and really enjoy your cricket? What does it mean to you?
It's a good question. That is it's difficult to maybe put down as sort of what it means to me, but what I get from it, I enjoy being part of a team that, you have to pull together as a cricket team. Obviously, individuals can sort of flourish within any particular game, and you may and within a team. So you may have someone who is a great batsman, and he scores hundreds every week, but unless you've got people that are willing to dive around in the field, and bowlers that can just plug away and support sort of those other good players, it's not always going to work. So I think it's that, for me, it's something I get out of it's that sort of team spirit, it's that camaraderie that you have. It's it's the winning is possible from any situation. I mean, that's what I like about cricket. I mean, I've played in games where we've been bowled out batting first. We've been bowled out for like 100, and you think, oh, it's not very good that, because we're playing this sort of where 250 scored would be a competitive score. So you think, oh, we've been bowled out for 100. It's like tough, but we've gone in and we've pulled out, and you get a few early wickets, and then you get a couple more, and then the momentum shifts, and everyone sort of lifts themselves, and you end up winning the game by sort of 30, 40 runs. You've bowled the opposition out. But I've also been on the receiving end of that as well, where, with a team's batted first and scored 350 against us, and then bowled us out for 27, I think was the low. And you're like, oh, yeah. There was one here in the UK recently. A team scored 570 for 3 in a 45 over game, and then bowled the opposition out for 57.
Jeez,
and you think,
who was playing for them? The World 11.
Yeah, no idea, but it's just, it happens. I mean, or a team bat first and score 350, and then this team batting second knock them off. And it's just like, it's just how it can sort of come around and what brings people together and how they develop. But I think ultimately a good team, a good cricket club, is defined not just on the field, it's what happens off the field more so. You've got to be friends off the field. You've got to be interacting socially. You've got to involve families. You've got to involve friends. You've got to get everyone involved. And to me, the best clubs generally do that.
Yeah, I think.
So what you're saying is Sorry. Yeah. So what you're saying is it's like its own ecosystem. It's like its own village with its own dynamic culture and all the layers that go to ultimately make you feel that sense of belonging. And we all want happiness, right? So I guess it's that ecosystem. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. That's it really. Yeah.
I think you also in cricket, especially when you play outside of, I'd say outside of India, UK, and Australia, you kind of become a citizen of the world as well, because, and you've probably experienced this as well, Cheese. I mean, I have to admit, when I grew up in Ireland and I went to university in Scotland, but it was only when I came and I played cricket in the United States that I knew what Diwali was or Holi was. It's only when I came here that I really appreciated how the different religions of the people who were in our club impacted their day-to-day and the things they celebrate and how important families were to them in different ways. And all of that was non-cricket related. It was all the stuff off the field as well. So I do think it's a real, as a sport, it's a real melting pot too. It's
definitely. Totally agree on that.
I have one last question for you. Being all around the world, what's the best tea break that you've ever had?
Ooh, good question. But I'm going to say it was in the outside of the UK. It would be in the Philippines, and it would be. I think it was a team called, like, they were sort of Indians of the Philippines, sounds daft, but Asians of the Philippines. But no, I'm pretty sure they were Indian, and they'd cooked like a whole load of like homemade Indian food for everyone. Bearing in mind we're playing in like 90-degree heat, with about 90% humidity, to be served like rice and sort of dal at half time on paper plates that were like so flimsy that you basically had to flex it into a bowl to keep everything on the plate. And it was great, like homemade sort of rotis, and just tucking in there. It was just perfect. Like the whole game stopped and like 20 teams went over and just got fed like canteen style.
Geez, just quickly, how was your second innings performance then?
I'm trying to think. I think that game we were playing a much better team than ourselves, and sorry, I thought someone was waking up in the house. And we got a couple of American guys playing for us who, they won't mind me sort of saying this, but they weren't the best cricketers. But we were playing these guys who were serious competitors, and we only needed so many runs to win. We needed like 30 runs to win off like 2 overs, which is like a big ask in sort of, especially when you've got
in any game.
a left arm sort of over pace bowler coming in, banging the ball in short on a hard track to an American guy that isn't used to the ball bouncing before it gets to him, and he's playing and missing. They're going above his head, so the umpire was calling them wide, and then they started deliberately bowling wide, because there were no extra balls for the wides in this particular tournament. So all the crowd that were watching started booing, but the guy who's bowling didn't know that the last ball of the over has to be a legitimate delivery, and he bowled it particularly wide, and it actually pitched off the strip, so it was a no ball, but it pitched off the strip. Our American guy had a big swing at it. He'd followed it, and it was really wide, and he outside edged it, and it flew off the 4. So we got obviously the no ball, the 4. It had to be bowled again anyway, because it was the next ball the over. But the no ball was a free hit. So he's then dispatched the free hit for a 4. We've scampered a couple of other runs in that over, and then the same thing happened in the last over, and we needed 4 off the last ball to win. And he's been bowled like a full toss beamer straight at him. And he's used to that. He's a baseball player. And he's just completely smashed it out the park, to which, like, we've stormed off the field to be, like, greeted by the other teams, like, who ran on the field to celebrate us beating this other team. So the second innings performance was quite good.
That food was awesome.
The food set the scene. It filled our bellies full of fire. Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Well, listen, Cheese, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. I understand it's very, very late for you, but great chat. And listen, this will not be the last time you come on, because we are going to come and pick your brains about England cricket. We could have sat here and we could have talked about poor old Johnny Bairstow. We could have talked about the county cricket game. We could have talked about, I just looked, Australia are getting run through by Zimbabwe, which you'll love to talk about, I'm sure, at some point. Maybe when Brett is around, we could bring that one up. But we'll maybe leave that there today. So any final words before we move on?
Other than thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I've been listening sort of avidly for the last few sort of podcasts that have come out, and really enjoyed just listening to you guys chatting away from sort of the other side of cricket that maybe brought us together through the NFT space and things like that. So it's nice to see the other side of people.
That's it. Well, listen, from Arnie and I, thanks a million for doing this for us. Cheese, really enjoyed it. Cheers.